Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
The city never really sleeps. Even before sunrise, distant traffic, muffled voices, and the low hum of machines create the feeling that somewhere, something important is already in motion. In the world of covert operations, that feeling never disappears. While ordinary people begin their day unaware, teams of professionals are already tracking movements, intercepting calls, studying routes, and preparing for events that could shift the balance of power in a matter of hours. In this world, missions are not announced publicly. They begin in silence. They begin with a file placed on a table, a photograph passed from one hand to another, or a short coded message sent through secure channels. Every operation starts long before the first shot is fired. It begins with information: who has been taken, who wants them back, who stands in the way, and how much blood may be spilled before it is over. The mission at the center of this story emerges from that dark and disciplined world, where every decision carries weight and every mistake can become fatal, far away from government offices and polished conference rooms. Powerful men control cities from the shadows. They command money, loyalty, fear, and violence. Their influence reaches through streets, ports, police departments, and private armies. In such a world, family becomes both strength and weakness. The son of a powerful criminal figure is more than a child. He is a symbol, an heir, leverage, and a target. When he disappears, panic spreads faster than truth. Suddenly, phone lines light up, trusted men are summoned, and every ally begins calculating risk. A kidnapping in this environment is not merely a personal tragedy. It is a direct challenge to authority. It signals that someone believes they can strike at the heart of power and survive the consequences. That single act creates the conditions for a larger conflict. The rescue of one boy becomes the spark that threatens to ignite a war between organizations, territories, and men whose reputations depend on fear. The missing boy becomes the center of a growing storm. He is young enough to still see fragments of normal life, but old enough to understand that his world is built on danger. Children raised near power often learn silence before freedom. They understand guarded doors, suspicious glances, and the quiet tension that follows their family everywhere. Yet even with that awareness, nothing prepares a child for being suddenly ripped from the familiar and thrown into captivity. The fear is immediate, but so is confusion. Faces blur together. Orders are shouted. The city that once seemed large and busy becomes a maze of unknown rooms, moving vehicles, and uncertain intentions. For those searching for him, every passing hour increases the stakes. The longer he remains hidden, the more difficult recovery becomes. Time begins to shape every decision. There is no luxury for hesitation, and no guarantee that waiting will make anything safer. When traditional channels fail, a different kind of solution is required. This is where professionals like Tyler Rake enter the picture. He is not introduced as a heroic symbol or a celebrated soldier returning to applause. He belongs to a harder reality. Men like him are called when a situation becomes too dangerous, too politically sensitive, or too violent for ordinary systems to handle. He operates in the space between legality and necessity. Years of conflict have shaped him into someone who understands movement, pressure, and survival better than comfort or peace. His experience is written not in speeches, but in instinct, where he studies a room, notices exits, reads body language, and calculates threat without seeming to think. He does not chase glory. He accepts assignments because the work is clear even when the moral boundaries are not. That makes him valuable. In chaotic environments where everyone else loses control, he becomes a form of controlled force. A mission like this is never simply about entering hostile territory and leaving with the target. Every operation begins with layers of intelligence. Maps are examined, streets are marked, surveillance images are reviewed, safe routes are proposed and rejected. Teams estimate who controls which neighborhoods, how quickly reinforcements can arrive, and what points of escape remain viable if everything goes wrong. These preparations do not guarantee success, but they create structure in a situation designed by enemies to be unpredictable. The team understands from the beginning that the city itself may become an opponent. Narrow roads, crowded markets, sudden checkpoints, hidden lookouts, and civilians caught in the middle all complicate movement. Every block can hide danger. Every minute spent in one place increases exposure. The mission, therefore, depends not only on courage, but on precision. Timing becomes as important as firepower, yet intelligence never captures the full human reality. Every mission also carries emotional weight, whether the people involved admit it or not. For those who organize the rescue, money may be the language of action, but fear remains present underneath it. A father facing the loss of his son does not think like a strategist alone. He thinks like someone confronting irreversible damage. For the boy in captivity, fear takes a more immediate form: uncertainty about whether anyone is coming, whether promises mean anything, and whether survival depends on obedience or luck. For the extraction team, emotion often takes a different shape. It becomes discipline. The only way to move through chaos is to reduce panic into procedure. Breathe, observe, decide, move. Professionals learn not to eliminate fear, but to function despite it. That distinction often determines who survives the first encounter. Tyler's acceptance of the assignment is shaped by more than money or obligation. He carries the kind of internal distance common among people who have spent too much time around. Violence, missions provide structure. They create objectives that temporarily silence whatever remains unresolved inside. In ordinary life, unresolved grief can spread quietly through every hour. In combat environments, there is no time for reflection. The mind narrows. Priorities become immediate. Reach the target. Secure the route. Stay alive. That practical clarity can become its own refuge. This gives Tyler an edge, but it also makes him more complicated than a simple hired gun. Beneath the professionalism is a man who has learned to live by movement because stillness asks harder questions. The mission begins externally as a rescue, but for him it also becomes another passage through a landscape where purpose and pain often overlap. The environment waiting for him is hostile long before he arrives. The city is not neutral ground. It already belongs to powerful interests. Networks of watchers notice unfamiliar faces. Information moves through neighborhoods faster than official communication. Drivers, vendors, guards, children in Elise anyone may be observing, reporting, or deciding where loyalty lies. In such places, the enemy is not limited to armed men in visible positions. It includes invisible systems of awareness. Once the extraction begins, silence will not last long. The first breach of routine will send signals outward. Doors will open. Phones will ring. Vehicles will start moving. Men with weapons will begin. Closing distance. That is why the opening stage of the mission matters so deeply. Surprise creates the only brief window in which the rescuers can shape events, instead of merely reacting to them as the operation takes form. Trust becomes one of the most fragile elements. Not everyone involved shares the same motive. Some want the boy returned because of loyalty, some because of debt, some because failure would damage their own standing. Others may already be calculating how to survive if the mission collapses. In environments governed by fear and power, alliances often hold only until pressure rises. Tyler understands this reality. He knows that danger rarely comes from a single direction. Hostility can emerge from enemies, uncertain partners, compromised officials, or changing orders from far away. This uncertainty creates tension even before the first move is made. The mission is not only about fighting through hostile streets. It is about navigating shifting intentions while maintaining enough control to reach the objective. At the center of all tactical preparation remains a simple human objective: reach the boy alive. That simplicity matters because complex operations can lose themselves in calculations. Routes, weapons, vehicles, communications, contingency plans, these are tools, not the purpose. The purpose is a frightened child caught inside a struggle larger than himself. That fact gives the mission emotional gravity. It transforms abstract strategy into immediate consequence. Every delay affects a real person. Every misjudgment can turn recovery into tragedy. For Tyler, this clarity may also sharpen commitment. Professionals who survive difficult work often rely on concrete objectives. They focus not on the entire political machinery surrounding the assignment, but on the immediate task that can still be controlled. Find him, protect him, get him out. The beginning of the mission, therefore, feels like the tightening of invisible wires. Every relevant force is moving closer to collision. On one side stands the extraction team, prepared but limited by time, geography, and incomplete information. On the other stands a city linked by criminal power, surveillance, and violence. Between them stands the boy, whose survival depends on whether preparation can overcome momentum. This is the point before chaos fully arrives, the final breath before action. It is a moment of tension more than movement. Vehicles wait. Weapons are checked. Instructions are repeated. Eyes remain alert. The streets outside continue as normal, unaware that within hours they may become the stage for pursuit, gunfire, and irreversible choices. That is what gives the mission its power from the very beginning. It is not simply an action scenario built around danger. It is a collision of human vulnerability and organized force. A child becomes the center of criminal conflict. A damaged professional is pulled into a rescue that will demand more than technical skill. A city becomes both battlefield and trap. Every element is already present before the operation officially begins. Fear, urgency, calculation, loyalty, grief, and violence waiting just beyond the edge of silence. The true beginning is not the first explosion or the first chase. It is this gathering pressure, this quiet assembly of purpose and threat. Once the mission starts, nothing will remain still. Every step forward will carry consequence, and every decision will push everyone involved deeper into a fight where survival is never guaranteed. Tyler Rake enters the story as a man who belongs to a world most people never see. He is not introduced through ceremony, reputation, or dramatic speeches. His identity is built through action, silence, and the way others react when his name is mentioned. In the covert world of private military operations, names carry weight. Only when they have been tested under pressure. Tyler's Hess. He's the kind of operative called when ordinary systems collapse when the mission is too dangerous, too politically sensitive, or too violent for official forces to manage openly. He exists in the grey area between soldier, contractor, and dare. Survivor. That ambiguity defines him from the beginning. He is not fighting for flags, public recognition, or institutional honor. He moves according to assignments, objectives, and the practical understanding that some conflicts are handled far from headlines. What immediately separates Tyler from others is his discipline. He does not project reckless aggression or theatrical toughness. His strength lies in control. Every movement suggests awareness. He notices entrances, windows, blind corners, distance between bodies, the way someone shifts their weight before speaking. These are not habits learned overnight. They are instincts carved by repeated exposure to environments where a second of distraction can end a life. He reads surroundings the way others read conversation. That calm attention makes him dangerous. Even in ordinary moments, there is the sense that part of him remains alert, measuring possibility, identifying risk, preparing for escalation. This does not make him emotionless. It makes him practiced. Survival has taught him that panic wastes time, and time is often the most valuable resource in hostile territory. His profession has also shaped the way he relates to the world. Men who spend years moving through conflict often begin to live differently from everyone around them. Home becomes temporary. Comfort feels unfamiliar. Silence can be more difficult than gunfire because silence leaves room for memory. Tyler carries that distance with him. He appears physically present but emotionally detached, as if some part of him remains elsewhere. That is one of the defining realities of mercenary life. Missions provide movement, and movement creates structure. There is always an objective, a route, a threat, a task. Outside that structure, unresolved thoughts become harder to ignore. Tyler's detachment is not emptiness. It feels more like someone who has seen enough loss to stop expecting permanence. He continues forward because forward is what he knows. The term Black Ops mercenary carries a specific meaning in his world. He is not simply a gunman hired for violence. His value lies in adaptability. He can enter unstable environments, assess changing conditions, and make decisions where rules disappear. That distinction matters. In chaotic operations, technical skill alone is not enough. Plans fail, communications break, allies disappear, routes close, civilians complicate movement. Under those conditions, survival depends on judgment under pressure. Tyler understands that no operation survives contact exactly as designed. He works with preparation, but he expects disruption. This makes him effective in places where more rigid operators might freeze or collapse. He does not need perfect conditions. He needs enough information to move, and enough discipline to adjust when reality changes. Combat has also taught him the physical language of danger. He knows what fear looks like before words reveal it. He recognizes desperation in a trembling hand, hesitation in a delayed glance, aggression in the tightening of shoulders. This ability allows him to interpret people quickly. In extraction work, human reading matters as much as weapons proficiency. Every encounter contains information. Is the guard alert or exhausted? Is the driver nervous because he is lying, or because he knows what lies ahead? Is a crowd frightened, hostile, or about to scatter? These judgments shape survival. Tyler's skill is not only that he can fight, it is that he can understand a situation while it is still forming. By the time visible violence begins, he has often already sensed where it is likely to emerge. Yet his competence does not make him invulnerable. In fact, what makes him compelling is the opposite. Beneath the professionalism lies visible wear. This is not only physical fatigue. It is the kind of internal weight carried by people who have lived too long inside danger. The body learns how to recover from wounds. The mind often keeps its own scars. Tyler carries memories that have not been resolved, losses that have not been neatly transformed into wisdom. That internal burden shapes the way he moves through life. He does not speak about it often because some experiences become too heavy for language. But it remains present in his silence, in moments when he appears briefly distant, in the sense that he is not merely avoiding the past, but surviving alongside it. That emotional complexity explains why he accepts work that others might reject. For many mercenaries, assignments are transactional: payment, logistics, risk. For Tyler, there is something more layered. Missions offer temporary clarity. They compress existence into immediate priorities. Reach the target, control the route, survive the contact. In those moments, internal conflict narrows. Pain becomes background. The mind has no space for reflection when the present demands total attention. This does not mean he seeks violence for pleasure. It means conflict offers a kind of order that ordinary life often cannot. That paradox makes him more human. He is not running toward chaos because he loves destruction. He is moving toward structure because stillness can be more difficult. His reputation among professionals also matters. In covert environments, trust is never automatic. People rely on patterns, not promises. Tyler's name carries value because others believe he will continue moving when circumstances deteriorate. That reliability becomes a form of currency. It does not mean he always wins or that operations unfold cleanly. It means that when the mission becomes dangerous, he remains functional. Teams need that kind of presence. In high-risk work, uncertainty spreads quickly. One person's panic can unravel everyone else. Tyler's steadiness becomes operational strength. His calm under pressure shapes the behavior of those around him. Others may not feel safe, but they know he remains focused. Sometimes that difference alone changes outcomes. Another defining trait is his relationship with violence. He understands it intimately, but he does not romanticize it. Violence in his world is not spectacle. It is consequence. It arrives fast, creates confusion, and leaves damage that cannot be undone. Because he understands this, he treats force as a tool rather than an identity. He can be ruthless when necessary, but his actions are guided by purpose. That distinction separates professionals from men who simply crave domination. Tyler does not escalate because of ego. He escalates when the objective requires it. Even then, every engagement carries cost, energy, exposure, risk to civilians, risk to the mission itself. He understands that every shot changes the environment. Once violence begins, the operation becomes harder to control. The extraction mission places all of these qualities under pressure. From the moment he accepts the assignment, he knows the work will demand more than technical efficiency. Recovering a kidnapped child from hostile territory is not a clean tactical exercise. It means entering a city controlled by competing powers, navigating uncertain alliances, and protecting someone who is frightened, vulnerable, and caught inside forces beyond his understanding. That changes the emotional shape of the operation. The mission remains professional, but the human stakes become harder to ignore. For Tyler, this matters. Beneath years of distance and discipline remains the capacity to recognize innocence placed in danger. That recognition creates tension between the mercenary and the man. As the operation unfolds, Tyler becomes more than a hired extractor. He becomes the point where calculation and responsibility meet. At first, the assignment may be defined by contract, logistics, and tactical planning. But once contact is made, reality becomes immediate. The boy is no longer an abstract objective in a file. He becomes a living presence, fearful, uncertain, dependent. That changes how the mission feels. Professional detachment becomes harder to maintain when another human being is looking at you not as a weapon, but as the only path out. This shift does not erase Tyler's discipline. It deepens it. The mission begins to carry emotional consequence alongside operational necessity. That is why Tyler Rake stands out as more than a conventional action figure. He represents the cost of survival in a hidden world. He is skilled because experience has forced him to become skilled. He is controlled because chaos has taught him the price of losing control. He is distant because loss has made closeness dangerous. Yet within that hardened exterior remains enough humanity for responsibility to matter. That combination gives him depth. He is not defined only by combat, endurance, or efficiency. He is defined by what remains human after all of those things have taken their toll. In that sense, Tyler Rake is not merely a Black Ops mercenary. He is a man carrying damage, discipline, and purpose into a mission that will test every part of who he has become. For Ovi Mahajan, life had always existed in the shadow of power. He was born into a world where money, influence, and fear moved together. From the outside, it might have looked like privileged large homes, private security, expensive cars, and the protection that comes with belonging to one of the most powerful families in the criminal underworld. But for a boy growing up inside that environment, comfort never meant freedom. Every hallway carried watchful eyes. Every outing was measured. Every conversation seemed shaped by caution. He understood, even at a young age, that his family's name opened doors while also turning him into a target. He did not choose that life. It was simply the reality around him, something he inherited long before he was old enough to understand what it truly meant. Children in powerful families often learn how to stay quiet before they learn how to feel safe. Ovi had seen the way adults around him spoke in guarded tones, the way men with weapons stood close but rarely smiled. and the way certain subjects caused rooms to grow suddenly silent. Even when nothing appeared wrong, there was always an invisible tension beneath daily life. It shaped the way he moved through the world. He learned that there were places he should not go, people he should not trust, and questions he should not ask. Yet he was still a child. Beneath the expectations and the protective walls was a boy who wanted ordinary things, space to breathe, moments without pressure, and the feeling of living for himself rather than as an extension of a larger empire. The night of the kidnapping begins like many moments of false calm. That is often how danger enters. It does not announce itself with warning. It arrives quietly, slipping into routine. There are streets filled with ordinary noise, lights in the distance, and people moving through the city as though nothing unusual is about to happen. For Ovi, it begins with familiarity. The environment does not immediately signal catastrophe. Yet within that normal surface, other forces are already in motion. Men have watched patterns, studied routes, timed movement, and chosen their moment. In criminal worlds, operations like these are not built on impulse. They are built on information. Someone knows where he will be. Someone knows when security will be weakest. Someone has already decided that tonight the balance of power will be challenged. The moment the abduction begins, time changes. What was ordinary becomes immediate confusion. The body reacts before the mind fully understands. Noise becomes sharper. Movement feels sudden and overwhelming. Faces appear and disappear too quickly to read. Instructions are shouted. Hands pull. Doors open. The familiar geography of the city breaks apart into fragments of panic. For a young boy, that first shock carries a particular terror. It is not only fear of harm. It is the collapse of certainty. The people who were supposed to protect him are suddenly absent, overpowered, or too far away. In a matter of seconds, the world stops feeling structured. Everything becomes motion without explanation. Ovi is taken not simply because he is vulnerable, but because of what he represents. That is what makes the kidnapping so dangerous. In another life, he might have been only a child. In this world, he is leverage. He is a message. He is pressure applied directly to a powerful father whose influence depends on strength, fear, and reputation. Those who seize him understand that attacking the son is a way of attacking the man without immediate direct confrontation. It is calculated psychological warfare. A kidnapping of this kind does more than create fear inside a family. It creates instability across networks of loyalty, debt, and power. The moment Ovi disappears, people far beyond him begin reacting. For the boy himself, captivity introduces a different kind of fear. Once the first violence settles, there is the quieter horror of uncertainty. Where has he been taken? Who are these men? What do they want? Is anyone coming? The mind begins searching for patterns because uncertainty is often more frightening than visible danger. Children caught in situations like this often become intensely observant. They listen closely, study faces, measure tone, and try to understand what words are spoken around them. Ovi may not fully grasp the politics or criminal calculations surrounding him, but he understands enough to know that his fate depends on forces outside his control. That realization can be deeply isolating. The kidnapping also exposes the loneliness built into power. People often imagine that influence guarantees protection. In reality, power can create larger threats. The more valuable the symbol, the greater the risk attached to it. Ovi's father commands fear, but fear cannot shield a son from vulnerability. That contradiction becomes painfully clear. Behind wealth and authority lies something fragile and humane, parent facing the possibility of losing a child. In criminal empires, emotional weakness is often hidden because enemies exploit it. Yet the kidnapping forces private fear into immediate action. Phone calls are made. Trusted lieutenants are summoned. Every contact becomes urgent. The father, who usually commands now, reacts. Across the city, information begins spreading with dangerous speed. In worlds built on loyalty and surveillance, disappearance never remains private for long. Drivers hear whispers. Guards exchange fragments of rumor. Rivals begin calculating what the event means. Every person connected to the family understands that this is no isolated crime. It is a move with consequences. The kidnapping changes the atmosphere even before retaliation begins. Suspicion grows. Pressure rises. Men who were once confident become cautious. Others see opportunity. In that way, Ovi's abduction becomes larger than the moment itself. It becomes the trigger for a chain reaction moving through multiple layers of criminal power. For Ovi, captivity also becomes an emotional test. Fear does not remain constant. It changes shape over time. At first there is panic, then there is waiting. Waiting can be its own form of psychological strain. Minutes stretch. Small sounds gain meaning. The mind circles through hope, doubt, and dread. He may remember familiar faces, fragments of home, conversations that suddenly feel distant. He may wonder whether his father knows, whether help is coming, whether the people holding him are nervous or calm. These thoughts matter because they reveal the human center of the event. Beneath all the strategic consequences remains a child trying to understand whether he will survive the night. The people responsible for taking him also face their own pressures. Once the abduction succeeds, they are no longer simply attackers. They become holders of something extremely dangerous. Possessing Ovi gives them leverage, but it also places them directly in the path of violent response. They must move quickly, remain hidden, control communication, and anticipate how far the father's reach extends. In kidnappings involving powerful figures, the hostage can become both weapon and liability. Every hour increases tension. Every mistake increases exposure. The kidnappers know they now stand inside a narrowing window before retaliation arrives. What makes this moment especially powerful is that it creates the emotional and tactical foundation for everything that follows. Before the kidnapping, the story contains tension. After it, the story acquires urgency. It turns abstract power into immediate human stakes. The disappearance of one boy transforms the city into a future battlefield. Men who might never have crossed paths are now drawn toward collision. Hidden professionals will be called, plans will be made, routes will be studied, weapons will be prepared. The kidnapping is the spark that begins that movement. Without it, there is no mission. There is only shadow. With it, action becomes inevitable. In the end, the kidnapping of Ovi Mahajan matters because it reveals the central truth of the story. Violence is not only about territory, money, or dominance. At its most powerful, it strikes at what people cannot replace. A child taken from the familiar becomes more than a tactical objective. He becomes the emotional center of a widening storm. For Ovi, the night marks the end of whatever fragile normalcy remained in his life. For his father, it becomes a moment of fear hidden beneath authority. For those who will come searching, it becomes the beginning of a mission where every second matters. The abduction is not merely the first major event. It is the moment that pulls every character into the same dangerous current, setting in motion a struggle that will soon consume the city. The moment Tyler enters Dhaka, the mission changes shape. Until then, everything has existed in reports. Surveillance photographs, routes marked on maps, and conversations held at a distance. Once he steps into the city, theory becomes reality. Every sound, every alley, every crowded road becomes immediate. The objective remains clear: find Ovi and get him out. But now, the environment itself becomes part of the conflict. A hostile city is more than a location. It is a living system of movement, pressure, hidden loyalties, and unpredictable reactions. From the first moment, Tyler understands that he is no longer entering neutral ground. He is stepping into territory where almost every advantage belongs to someone else. Dhaka feels alive in a way that can be both ordinary and dangerous. Streets are filled with traffic, vendors, motorcycles, pedestrians, children running between vehicles, and voices rising from every direction. Markets remain crowded. Narrow lanes open into wider roads and then collapse again into tighter spaces. To an outsider, it can feel chaotic. To those who live within it, the city has rhythm. Tyler recognized something important immediately, that rhythm can either hide him or expose him. Crowds provide cover, but they also slow movement. Traffic creates confusion, but it can also become a trap. The density of life means visibility is constant. Someone is always watching, even if no one appears to be paying attention. This is what makes entering the city so dangerous. Tyler is not only dealing with armed enemies, he is moving through an environment already connected by human awareness. Information in places like this travels differently. It does not depend only on official communication. Drivers noticed unfamiliar faces. Vendors remember unusual movement. Security guards exchange quick observations. Children standing in corners may understand more than adults expect. Every street becomes part of an informal surveillance network. That means secrecy has limits. Even before the first confrontation, Tyler knows that once he disturbs the normal pattern of the city, word will begin moving outward faster than he can control. His first movements are cautious and deliberate. He does not rush in with visible aggression because experience has taught him that the opening phase of any extraction is often the most fragile. This is the period where surprise still exists. Once violence begins, the city will react. Vehicles will be redirected. Lookouts will send warnings. Men with weapons will begin closing distance. Until that moment, Tyler's greatest weapon is observation. He studies routes, measures foot traffic, notes escape paths, identifies places where movement may bottleneck, and calculates how quickly a calm street could become hostile. The difference between survival and disaster often begins with those first quiet assessments. The city also creates psychological pressure. Even the most experienced operator feels it. In a crowded environment, danger becomes harder to isolate. In open combat, the threat is visible. Here, it can hide behind ordinary life. A man carrying groceries may be irrelevant, or may be reporting movement through a phone call. A parked motorcycle may be transportation or a future pursuit vehicle. A narrow lane may offer concealment or become a dead end. This uncertainty forces constant mental calculation. Tyler cannot simply move forward. He must interpret every block, every intersection, every shift in atmosphere. That kind of sustained alertness drains energy long before the first shot is fired. As he advances deeper into Dhaka, the city begins to reveal its layered structure. Some streets feel public and exposed, others feel controlled. There are neighborhoods where the balance of power is visible without being openly spoken. Men standing in doorways watch longer than necessary. Conversations pause when unfamiliar figures pass. Certain corners carry the feeling that they belong to someone. In criminal territory, control is often subtle but unmistakable. Tyler understands this language. He knows when he is entering spaces where his presence has already been noticed. That awareness shapes his pace, every unnecessary second spent in the wrong place increases the chance of contact. The rescue mission depends not only on speed, but on timing. That is especially true in a city like Dhaka. Moving too fast creates visibility. Moving too slowly invites containment. Tyler must balance both pressures. He cannot afford reckless momentum, but he also cannot allow hesitation to become paralysis. This is one of the hidden difficulties of urban extraction. The streets themselves generate friction. Traffic delays, vehicles, crowds slow pursuit. Intersections become points of exposure. Even reaching a destination can take longer than tactical planning predicts. In those delays, the enemy gains time. Every minute lost allows more eyes, more information, and more armed response. What makes the city especially powerful in this stage of the story is that it feels indifferent. Around Tyler, ordinary life continues. People bargain in markets. Children laugh. Drivers argue over space in traffic. Food stalls operate. Conversations continue. That contrast deepens the tension. For the mission team, every movement carries life and death consequence. For the city, it is another day. This indifference makes the danger feel more real. Violence does not arrive in isolation. It grows inside the ordinary flow of human life. That means the coming conflict will not unfold on an empty battlefield. It will erupt inside streets already filled with people who never chose to stand near it. Tyler also understands the moral complexity this creates. Every action in a dense urban environment carries risk beyond the immediate target. Force used too early or too broadly can panic civilians, block escape routes, and create chaos that benefits pursuers. Professional operators know that controlling escalation matters as much as surviving it. This is why Tyler remains measured. His experience is not simply about fighting harder than everyone else. It is about recognizing when restraint protects. The mission. In a city packed with life, discipline becomes more valuable than aggression. One impulsive move can turn tactical difficulty into catastrophe. The deeper he moves, the more the atmosphere tightens. There is often a moment in dangerous environments when instinct senses that the invisible line has been crossed. The city begins to feel different. Conversations seem shorter. Certain faces appear twice. Movement no longer feels anonymous. Tyler knows this sensation. It means the mission is entering active territory. He may not yet see armed resistance, but the environment is already beginning to respond. This is the point where preparation and reality start to collide. From here forward, every decision becomes sharper. Every wrong turn grows more expensive. For Ovi, somewhere hidden within this vast city, Dhaka has become something entirely different. For Tyler, it is tactical terrain. For the boy, it is a maze of uncertainty, fear, and captivity. That contrast gives the mission emotional force. The same streets that Tyler reads through strategy are, for Ovi, the walls of a prison he cannot understand. The city becomes both battlefield and barrier. It holds the target while also concealing him. This makes every movement more urgent. Tyler is not merely navigating hostile geography. He is racing against the city's ability to absorb people into its complexity. Entering the dangerous streets of Dhaka, therefore, becomes more than a transition between briefing and action. It is the moment when the mission truly begins. The controlled certainty of preparation gives way to the unstable reality of human terrain. From now on, nothing will remain theoretical. Every route will be tested by pressure. Every calculation will meet resistance. Every delay will matter. The city itself becomes a participant in the story, watching, containing, revealing, and threatening. For Tyler, this is the first real threshold. He has crossed from planning into consequence. And every step deeper into Dhaka carries him closer to the moment when silence will finally break. The first major rescue operation begins at the moment planning gives way to action. Until now, every detail has existed in fragments, intelligence reports, surveillance, guarded conversations, and educated assumptions about where Ovi is being held. Once Tyler moves toward the target location, uncertainty becomes immediate. Every step carries consequence. There is no longer space for abstract thinking. The mission narrows into a simple objective: locate the boy, secure him, and escape before the city has time to fully react. That simplicity, however, hides enormous pressure. In extraction work, the opening minutes often determine whether an operation remains controlled or collapses into survival. Tyler approaches the objective with the discipline of someone who understands how quickly plans can fail. He does not rush in with visible force, because the first advantage he holds is surprise. In hostile environments, surprise creates a short and fragile window. Once broken, the enemy begins adapting. Lookouts send warnings, phones start ringing, doors close, reinforcements move, and the city itself becomes more difficult to cross. That means the initial approach is almost as important as the rescue itself. Every sound matters. Every shadow becomes relevant. Every second before contact is an opportunity to preserve control. The location where Ovi is being held does not feel like a battlefield at first glance. That is what makes it dangerous. Captivity often hides inside ordinary structures rooms, behind quiet walls, guarded buildings that do not announce their purpose, spaces that appear normal until viewed through the lens of tension. Tyler studies entry points, angles of movement, lines of sight, and the likely placement of armed men. He knows the goal is not simply to break in. It is to break in without allowing confusion to outrun him. Once violence begins, speed will matter. But before it begins, clarity matters more. Inside the building, the atmosphere changes immediately. Even when outwardly quiet, hostile spaces carry a certain density. People listen differently. Footsteps seem louder. Small movements become amplified. Tyler enters with complete focus. His attention divides across multiple layers at once, where the nearest threat may emerge, how quickly the structure can become compromised, where Ovi is likely positioned, and how long before someone realizes the pattern has been disturbed. This is where experience becomes visible. Less prepared men might see only walls and corridors. Tyler sees timing, risk, and geometry. The first confrontation arrives with sudden force. In covert operations, violence often moves faster than thought. A guard turns, notices something wrong, and the fragile silence ends. From that moment forward, the mission changes speed. There is no returning to quiet entry. The objective now depends on rapid control. Tyler's reactions are immediate, not because he is fearless, but because years of survival have taught him that hesitation can multiply danger. The first moments after exposure are often the most decisive. Whoever controls them shapes everything. That follows. As he moves deeper, the emotional center of the mission finally becomes real. Until now, Ovi has been an objective, a name, a photograph, a location in a briefing. When Tyler reaches him, the mission becomes human. The boy is no longer an abstract target to recover. He is frightened, uncertain, and caught inside a situation larger than his understanding. This changes the atmosphere instantly. Extraction work always carries practical demands, but the presence of the person being rescued creates another layer of responsibility. Tyler is no longer moving only for tactical success. He is now responsible for the survival of someone who depends entirely on him. For Ovi, Tyler's arrival carries its own complexity. Rescue does not erase fear immediately. A child who has been taken, confined, and surrounded by armed strangers cannot instantly trust another unfamiliar face simply because he arrives with force. In those first moments, confusion remains powerful. Is this another captor? Is escape truly possible? Can this man be believed? Tyler understands that speed alone is not enough. He must establish direction, authority, and enough calm for the boy to move. In high-risk extractions, emotional control becomes as important as physical control. Once Ovi is secured, the operation enters its most unstable phase. Reaching the hostage is only half the mission. Getting out is often harder. Entry can rely on surprise. Exit rarely can. By now, the hostile environment has begun responding. Men are moving. Information is spreading. Every second spent inside increases the chance of containment. Tyler knows that once the building recognizes the breach, escape routes begin shrinking. This creates immediate pressure. The mission is no longer about controlled penetration. It becomes movement under accelerating threat. The structure itself now becomes hostile terrain. Corridors that once offered concealment may become traps. Stairwells can channel pursuit. Doors that were neutral moments earlier may now conceal armed resistance. Tyler must think ahead while moving in the present. He cannot focus only on the next step. He must anticipate where opposition will form, how quickly it can close distance, and how Ovi's presence changes mobility. Protecting a frightened child while navigating hostile pursuit creates a radically different operational challenge. Speed matters, but protection shapes every choice. Outside, the city has already begun reacting, even if only in fragments. The first breach sends pressure outward. Word moves through criminal networks faster than formal systems. Men who do not yet know every detail, still understand that something has gone wrong. This matters because urban rescue operations are never isolated. The target building is only the first layer. Beyond it waits a larger human landscape capable of turning escape into pursuit. Tyler feels this pressure even before he fully sees it. He understands that time is now working against him. What makes this first major rescue operation so important is that it transforms the story from preparation into consequence. Before this moment, there were possibilities. After it, there is commitment. The extraction has begun, and there is no clean return to planning. Every actor in the city will now respond to a reality already in motion. The mission no longer belongs to those who designed it. It now belongs to those trying to survive it. That shift gives the operation both tactical intensity and emotional weight. In the end, the first rescue operation succeeds in doing something essential. It places Tyler and Ovi together inside the same dangerous current. The boy is no longer hidden. The rescuer is no longer an approaching force. They are now bound by the same objective: keep moving, stay alive, and reach the way out before the city closes around them. That is why this moment matters so deeply. It is not the conclusion of the mission. It is the beginning of the real struggle. The rescue has been achieved, but escape remains uncertain, and the streets beyond the building are about to become far more dangerous than the silence inside. The moment the first rescue succeeds, there is a brief illusion of progress. Tyler has reached Ovi, secured him, and moved him out of immediate captivity. On the surface, that should feel like the mission's turning point. But in extraction work, success often creates a new kind of danger. Once the target is recovered, everyone involved becomes visible. The hidden phase ends. From that moment onward, movement is no longer defined by stealth, but by pursuit. Tyler understands this immediately. The most dangerous part of many operations begins not at entry, but during escape, when enemies know exactly what has been taken from them, and begin closing in from every direction. At first, the escape still carries a fragile sense of control. Routes have been planned, vehicles are prepared, communications remain active. The team believes there is still a path out of the city if movement stays disciplined. But hostile environments rarely respect plans for long. The deeper Tyler moves. With Ovi, the more pressure gathers around them. The city has begun responding. Information travels through criminal networks with alarming speed. Men who do not know every detail already know enough. The boy has been taken. Armed professionals are moving, and the window to stop them is closing. That shared awareness transforms the streets into tightening terrain. Betrayal enters this atmosphere, not as sudden shock, but as the revelation of something fragile that was always present in certain loyalty. In covert operations, trust is often temporary. People cooperate for payment, leverage, obligation, or fear. Under pressure, those motives can shift quickly. What seemed like a stable alliance can become unstable the moment risk grows larger than reward. Tyler understands this truth better than most. That is why betrayal in such a world rarely feels dramatic in the traditional sense. It feels cold, practical, and immediate. A promise changes. A route disappears. Support fails to arrive. Suddenly, the plan that seemed possible begins collapsing from within. For Ovi, this change is deeply unsettling. He has only just been pulled from captivity, and already the sense of rescue becomes uncertain. Safety remains abstract. The adults around him speak urgently, move faster, and react to information he cannot fully understand. He feels the shift in atmosphere, even if he does not know its exact cause. Fear returns in a new form. During captivity, the danger was confinement. Now it becomes movement through uncertainty. The boy is no longer hidden in one place. He is exposed, moving through streets where every turn might bring another threat. The ambush arrives with the brutal speed common to urban pursuit. In cities like Dhaka, space compresses danger. Narrow roads limit movement. Traffic blocks clean escape. Buildings create blind corners. Crowds slow reaction time. A well-timed attack can transform mobility into entrapment within seconds. That is what makes ambush so effective. It weaponizes environment. Tyler knows that once hostile forces anticipate direction, every planned route becomes vulnerable. The enemy does not need perfect control. They only need to predict enough to create a point of collision. The first moments of the ambush are defined by confusion and violent compression. Vehicles that represented escape become targets. Safe. Distance disappears. Noise floods the senses. Shouts, engines, impacts, rapid movement, sudden changes of direction. In such moments, the human mind instinctively seeks orientation. Tyler's value lies in how quickly he creates it. He does not have the luxury of surprise or emotional reaction. Years of combat have trained him to reduce chaos into immediate priorities. Protect Ovi. Identify the direction of pressure. Find space to move. Survive the next 30 seconds. Under real threat, survival often depends on that narrowing of focus. Betrayal becomes most painful not because it creates danger, but because it destroys certainty. Tactical plans can adapt to visible enemies. They struggle more when the assumptions beneath them prove false. If an expected ally becomes unreliable, then every related calculation must change instantly. Timing becomes uncertain. Support becomes doubtful. Routes once considered viable become compromised. Tyler feels this shift with brutal clarity. He now understands that survival will depend less on original planning and more on improvisation under pressure. From this point onward, control becomes partial and temporary. For Ovi, Tyler's response becomes the only stable element in a collapsing situation. The boy may not understand tactics, alliances, or operational failures, but he understands one thing clearly. This man continues moving. In extreme fear, human beings often attach themselves to visible competence. Tyler's calm under pressure matters not only tactically but psychologically. Every clear command, every decisive movement, every refusal to freeze creates something essential. For a frightened child, trapped inside violent uncertainty, direction becomes a form of protection. The ambush also reveals the physical reality of survival. In films, action can sometimes appear clean or stylized. In truth, survival is exhausting. Every burst of movement drains strength. Every decision carries physical cost. Urban combat requires running, lifting, reacting, balancing, watching multiple angles, and maintaining control while adrenaline narrows perception. Tyler is skilled, but skill does not erase fatigue. It only allows him to keep functioning despite it. That matters because the mission is becoming longer, harder, and less predictable. Every escape from immediate danger carries the weight of what still remains ahead. As they fight through the aftermath of the ambush, the city itself becomes increasingly hostile. What was once merely crowded now feels watchful. The environment is no longer background. It has become an active pressure. Every intersection may conceal pursuit. Every vehicle may carry hostile eyes. Every delay strengthens those closing in. Tyler understands that survival now depends on mobility more than confrontation. Winning every exchange is impossible. The true objective is to stay alive long enough to keep moving. That strategic clarity becomes crucial. In overwhelming environments, survival often means refusing to become fixed in place. Emotionally, this stage also changes the relationship between Tyler and Ovi. Shared danger creates connection faster than ordinary time. The boy begins to understand that Tyler is not simply a stranger with a weapon. He is the person placing himself between threat and survival. Tyler, in turn, begins to feel the human weight of responsibility more deeply. Ovi is no longer merely an assignment extracted from a hostile room. He is now a living presence whose fear, trust, and survival are directly tied to every decision Tyler makes. That emotional shift adds meaning to every act of endurance. Betrayal, ambush, and survival become one of the most important turning points in the story because they strip away illusion. The mission is no longer defined by clean objectives, prepared routes, or the belief that planning alone can control events. It becomes raw movement through pressure, where survival depends on judgment, adaptability, and will. The betrayal reveals how unstable alliances can be. The ambush proves how quickly hostile environments punish exposure, and survival itself becomes more than staying alive in a single moment, becomes the determination to keep moving when everything around you is trying to stop you. From here onward, Tyler and Ovi are no longer simply escaping a building. They are fighting through a city that now knows exactly where to look. Sajay Yu enters the story as a figure who is difficult to read completely. At first, he appears to belong to the same dangerous world as everyone else surrounding Ovi's disappearance men, shaped by power, loyalty, and violence. He is not introduced as a simple ally or a clear enemy. Instead, he carries the kind of controlled presence that suggests deeper calculation. In environments ruled by criminal influence, people rarely reveal their full intentions immediately. Words are often chosen carefully, and actions often carry more meaning than explanations. Seiyu belongs to that world. From the beginning, there is a sense that what drives him is more layered than what appears on the surface. His connection to Ovi's family gives him immediate emotional and strategic importance. He is not merely a distant contractor brought in for a task. He has proximity. He understands the family, the stakes, and the consequences of failure. That closeness matters because it creates expectations. Those around him assume he will act in service of recovery. Yet closeness also creates pressure. When a child of a powerful family is taken, everyone connected to that family feels the shock differently. Some react from loyalty. Others react from fear. Some react because their own survival may depend on what happens next. This is the complicated space Seiyu occupies. What makes Seiyu compelling is that his motives are not rooted in a single emotion. They emerge from multiple pressures, colliding at once. There is professional obligation, personal loyalty, fear of consequences, and the brutal logic of survival within criminal systems. In ordinary life, motives can often be explained simply. In the world surrounding Ovi's kidnapping, they rarely can. People do not act for one reason alone. They act because duty, fear, pride, family, and self-preservation overlap. Saj's choices begin to make sense only when viewed through that layered reality. The kidnapping places him in an especially dangerous position. Ovi's disappearance is not just a crisis for the father. It becomes a crisis for everyone whose standing depends on proximity to power. Failure in such worlds is rarely treated as unfortunate. It can be treated as weakness, betrayal, or irrelevance. That creates enormous pressure. If Ovi is not recovered, consequences may spread far beyond grief. Reputation can collapse. Trust can evaporate. Survival itself can become uncertain. Say you, this means the mission is not abstract. It carries personal stakes that may be as immediate as the rescue itself. This is where his hidden motives begin to emerge more clearly. On the surface, his actions align with the broader objective: recover the boy, but beneath that surface lies another urgency. He is not only trying to save Ovi, he is also trying to navigate what Ovi's loss means for his own position, his family, and his future. That distinction matters. It does not automatically make him disloyal. It makes him human inside a brutal system. When people operate under extreme pressure, they often pursue the same visible objective while carrying very different internal reasons. Sayu's hidden motives also reveal how fragile alliances become under stress. In the early stages of an operation, shared goals can create temporary unity, but once danger intensifies, the differences underneath become more visible. Tyler approaches the mission with professional clarity. Locate Ovi, secure him, and get out. Saj's relationship to the mission is more emotionally entangled. He is connected to its consequences in ways Tyler initially is not. That creates tension. Even when both men move toward the same target, they may not be moving toward the same outcome in exactly the same way. This emotional complexity shapes the way Sayu makes decisions. He is not simply calculating routes or reacting to immediate threats. He is carrying the weight of what failure will mean beyond the operation itself. That burden influences judgment. It can create urgency, impatience, and willingness to take risks others might avoid. Under extreme pressure, even intelligent people can become more dangerous, not because they lose control entirely, but because the stakes inside them become harder to separate from the mission in front of them. Sozi's hidden motives make him unpredictable in precisely that way. For Tyler, this creates an important shift in understanding. In covert operations, uncertainty about allies can be as dangerous as visible enemies. A hostile force can often be anticipated through movement, weapons, and intent. Hidden motives are more difficult because they live inside decisions. A delayed action, a withheld detail, a sudden change of direction, small choices can reveal that people are carrying different priorities. Tyler senses this tension. He understands that survival depends not only on defeating pursuers but on recognizing how unstable the internal structure around him may become. For Ovi, much of this remains invisible. He does not fully understand the layered politics surrounding his disappearance, yet he feels the emotional consequences. Children often recognize tension before they understand its causes. Changes in tone, pace, and urgency communicate enough. The adults around him are not moving with calm certainty. They are carrying pressure. That matters because Ovi's survival is being shaped not only by open conflict but by invisible human conflict, fear, obligation, and private calculation unfolding around him. One of the most powerful aspects of Saja's hidden motives is that they resist simple moral judgment. It would be easy to reduce him to either loyalty or betrayal, but that would flatten the reality of the world he inhabits. He is acting inside a system where personal duty, family pressure, fear of punishment, and emotional responsibility collide. That does not excuse every decision, but it makes them more believable. Human beings under extreme conditions rarely behave according to clean categories. They move through contradictions. Seiyu embodies that truth. As the mission grows more violent and unstable, those hidden motives become increasingly important, because they affect trust, timing, and choice. In higher risk extractions, even small differences in intention can reshape outcomes. The question is no longer only who wants Ovi recovered. It becomes who wants what happens after recovery and at what cost. That deeper layer of motive transforms the mission from a straightforward rescue into something more psychologically charged. Every alliance now carries uncertainty beneath it. Sei's hidden motives, therefore, add essential depth to the story. They remind us that danger is not created only by enemies with weapons. Sometimes it grows from the conflicting pressures inside people who appear to be on the same side. His actions emerge from loyalty, fear, survival, and responsibility all at once. That complexity makes him one of the story's most human figures. He is neither purely heroic nor simply deceptive. He is a man trying to move through a brutal world where every decision carries consequences beyond the immediate moment. In that tension between visible purpose and private urgency, Seiyu becomes one of the most compelling forces shaping the mission's fate. Amir Asif enters the story not merely as another armed adversary, but as the force that turns the rescue into a citywide hunt. Until this point, Tyler's mission is defined by movement, pressure, and uncertainty. But once Amir Asif commits himself to the pursuit, the nature of danger changes. The extraction is no longer only about escaping a building or surviving isolated clashes. It becomes a conflict against a man whose authority reaches through the streets, whose influence travels faster than vehicles, and whose reaction is shaped by both power and humiliation. When Ovi is taken from his control, it is not simply a tactical loss. It is a direct challenge to dominance. In criminal worlds built on fear, reputation matters almost as much as territory. Power survives because people believe it is unbreakable. The moment the belief weakens, every rival begins watching. Every subordinate begins calculating. Every alliance becomes less certain. Amir Asif understands this instinctively. That is why his pursuit feels relentless from the very beginning. He is not responding only as a captor who has lost a hostage. He is responding as a man whose authority has been publicly tested. Allowing Tyler and Ovi to disappear would mean more than failure. It would mean visible vulnerability, and visible vulnerability is dangerous currency in his world. What makes Amir especially threatening is that he does not rely only on armed men. He commands a living network. His power extends into streets, neighborhoods, vehicles, and human observation. In a city like Dhaka, this creates a powerful advantage. He does not need to personally see Tyler's movements. He only needs enough eyes and enough fear distributed through the city. Drivers notice unusual routes. Lookouts report unfamiliar movement. Men posted at intersections pass fragments of information forward. Each piece alone may be incomplete, but together they create pursuit. That is how the city begins to feel smaller. Around Tyler, Amir's presence expands beyond his physical location. The relentless nature of the hunt also creates psychological pressure. Tyler understands combat, but pursuit creates a particular kind of exhaustion. In direct confrontation, threat is visible. During pursuit, threat remains active, even when nothing immediate is happening. Every pause carries uncertainty. Every street may already be compromised. Every decision about direction becomes more consequential because the enemy is adapting at the same time. Amir turns movement itself into pressure. He does not need constant direct contact to become dangerous. The knowledge that he is closing in from multiple angles is enough to change every calculation. For Ovi, Amir's pursuit carries deeper emotional meaning. Captivity was frightening, but it was fixed. He knew where he was, even if he did not know. What would happen next? Now fear becomes mobile. He is moving, yet still not free. The city outside does not feel like escape. It feels like a larger maze. He senses that the people chasing him are not distant abstractions. They are close, persistent, and determined. That awareness intensifies every moment. Rescue has happened, but safety remains far away. The boy is now caught between liberation and continued danger. Amir's response also reveals something important about his character. He is not reckless. Men who rise to power in violent systems rarely survive through rage alone. His anger exists, but it is shaped by control. He applies pressure through organization. He mobilizes resources. He narrows options. He turns geography into containment. That makes him more dangerous than a man driven only by impulse. He understands that in urban pursuit, forcing the target into fewer viable routes often matters more than overwhelming them immediately. Patience and pressure become strategic weapons. The city becomes increasingly hostile because Amir knows how to use it. Roads that once represented escape begin turning into corridors of exposure. Intersections become potential points of interception. Crowds that once provided concealment now create delay. Vehicles that offered movement can become traps. Tyler feels this transformation with growing intensity. He is not only escaping armed men, he is moving against a system designed to reduce freedom of motion. That is the true power of Amir's pursuit. It transforms the environment itself into an extension of his reach. As the chase continues, the pressure begins affecting every decision Tyler makes. Time becomes more valuable and more dangerous. Moving too fast creates visibility. Moving too slowly invites containment. Every pause to rest, reassess, or protect Ovi carries cost. This is where Amir's relentless strategy becomes especially effective. He does not need to win every confrontation. He only needs to keep compressing time and space until exhaustion begins shaping the target's choices. In prolonged pursuit, fatigue can become as dangerous as gunfire. For Tyler, this becomes a test not only of skill but of endurance and judgment. Combat ability can solve immediate encounters, but relentless pursuit demands something different. It requires the ability to remain clear-minded while pressure accumulates. It requires resisting the temptation to become purely reactive. That is difficult because pursuit naturally pulls people into short-term think and escape, the next corner, survive the next exchange, find the next vehicle. Tyler must do all of that while still preserving enough strategic awareness to avoid being guided into predictable movement. That balance becomes essential. The emotional stakes also deepen because Amir's pursuit forces Tyler and Ovi into closer dependence. Shared danger creates accelerated trust. Ovi begins to understand that Tyler is not merely fighting through isolated obstacles. He is standing between the boy and a force determined to reclaim him at any cost. Tyler, in turn, feels the responsibility. Becoming heavier, every mistake now carries immediate human consequence. The chase is no longer only about tactical success. It becomes about preserving the fragile possibility of freedom.
The ending of Extraction 2020 focuses on Tyler Rake's final mission to extract Ovi Mahajan after a brutal chain of betrayals, gang warfare, and personal sacrifice. By the time the final act began, Tyler has already lost most of his team, including Nick's brother, Gasford's allies, and nearly every safe routes out of Dhaka. Ovi, in the son of imprisoned drug lord revival crime boss Amir Asif, has used his entire network to hunt him down. Saju, Ovi's father, loyal protector, has been focused into conflicting decisions, sometimes help Tyler Rake and sometimes opposing him. The ending is built on collapsing trust, where every alliance has been broken and survival become the only goal. Tyler decided that the only way to save Ovi is to attempt an extremely dangerous extraction across the city and toward the river roads. Knowing that Asif men control most exist, this step up a final escape sequences that is both physical and emotional, and Tyler has grown attached on Ovi like a surrogate son. As the escape unfolds, Tyler and Ovi move through heavily armed territory controlled by Asif mercenaries. The tension rises because Saju is also pursuing them, but not out of pressure. Hostiling, he still wants Ovi alive, believing he's honoring his original duty. However, misunderstanding and pressure from Asif forces lead to be greater confrontation. Saju is ultimately killed during the chaos, market a turning point where any remaining ambiguity about loyalty disappears. His death also reflects the film themes that in the world of crime lord and mercenaries, even honorable identification cannot survive the system of violence. Taylor withlands how every path is closing, yet he continues pushing forward, driving more by responsibilities than survival intent. Ovi, meanwhile, begin to see Taylor not just a rescuer but and someone willing to risk everything from him. The emotional connection between the foundation of the ending, meaning showing how human bonds can form even in the most violent environments. After Saju's death, Taylor realized that escaping through normal routes is impossible. Amir Asif mean tighten their control over the city, turning Dhaka into a controlled hunting ground. The only remaining option is to cross the river under heavy fire. Taylor cries over through collapsing streets and sleeper zones, taking hints and longer operation like a professional mercenary, but like someone action on pure intrigue and emotional attachment. The mission is no longer about money or orders. It becomes about completing and survival of the child. The shift is important because it redefines Taylor's character from a detached soldier into someone seeking redemption. The river becomes symbolic, representing the final barrier between death and freedom. As they approach it, the intensity of gunfire increases and Taylor injuries worsen, showing that even skilled operatives cannot fully escape consequences in such an environment. Taylor finally managed to get into water, what the himself is critically wounded as the attempts to secure Ovi's safety in the river. He is not multiple times by unseen attacker. The film showed down emotionally at moment, emphasizing Taylor's acceptance of what is happening instead of panic. There is resignation mixed with real life that Ovi might survive. Taylor lets go, allowing Ovi to drift away toward potential refuge. This moment is important because it represents the culmination of Taylor's emotional arc. He began as a man detached from life, shaped by loss and trauma, but ended by willing sacrificing himself of someone else. The river cries Ovi away while Taylor sinks beneath the surface. The cinematophysically suggests ambiguity. His body disappears underwater, leaving his fate uncertain. This ambiguity is intentional and it keeps the character survival open interpretation while reinforcing the emotional weight of the sacrifice. In the aftermath, Ovi is refused by Nick, who arrives with reinforcement about tracking the situation. He ensures that Ovi is taken to safety, completing the extraction mission that began as a corporate job but evolved into something far more personal. Nick's presence in the ending also reinforces her roles as a stabilizing force within the chaos, construction within the violence driven decision of others. Always survival, the mission success, but it comes at the cost of nearly every life involved in the operation. The sector confirms that Asif's control over OI is broken and his influence is weakened through not entirely eliminated. The ending avoided fully resolving the criminal network, instead focusing on the emotional resolution of the saving the boy. The reinforced the idea that the mission was never just about geopolitics or crime, it was about one life being protected against overwhelming odds. Taylor appeared death, leaving a strong emotional impact on Ovi, who began to understand the sacrifice made for him. The boy's impression in the final scene suggests trauma mixed with gratitude and confusion. He was being pulled from one violent world into another, but he is alive because someone chose to give their life for him. The moment defines the emotional core. The film Ovi's character arc is not about becoming a fighter of escaping danger alone, but about surviving something that permanently changed his understanding of human value. Taylor became a symbol in the memory rather than just a ritual. The ending used his transformation to highlight the long-term physiological impact of violence and ensure operation on children caught in criminal system. It was raised question about whether survival alone is enough when it is achieved through such extreme loss. The film deliberately leaves Taylor's fate ambiguous. White most viewers interpret his fall into the rise and death. The final note underwater suggests uncertainty. The ambiguity is important because it reflects the theme of survival in extreme conditions. Taylor is shown as someone who has repeatedly survived impossible situations throughout his life, making his death feel uncertain rather than definitive. Over narrative, the emotional intent is clear. His journey reaches its conclusion through sacrifice, The ambiguity allows space from continuation, which later become relevant in the sequel. At the same time, it's present the ending from feeling too close to predictable. The water becomes both a literal and symbolic boundary between life and death, and Taylor's disappearance into it represents the unresolved nature of trauma and redemption. Amirasif, the antagonists don't not receive a traditional resolution in the ending. The network is disappeared but not completely destroyed. This choice reflects the reality of criminal system in which revolving one target does not eliminate the structure entirely. His rule in the ending is more thematic than narrative, representing the larger system of exploitation and violence that drive the entire conflict. Even though Oval is refused, the force that created his situation remain partially drive the entire conflict. Even though Ovi is refused the complete resolution to symbolic violence but rather a temporary intervention, the ending therefore avoids simple victory and instead present a partial success that's come with emotional and moral cost. The absence of a clean resolution for Asif adds realism to the storyboard. Saju's death is also significant in shaping the emotional meaning of the ending. Initially introduced as an antagonist to Taylor, Saju's character gradually becomes more complex, revealing that his actions are driven by loyalty to Ovi's father and disappear to protect the boy. The final moments show a man caught between conflicting loyalties, unable to fully align with either side. His death represents the collapse of traditional honor codes in a world dominated by mercenary violence and criminal control. It also mirrors Tyler Rake's sacrifice. A both men ultimately prioritize over survival over than on. However, unlike Taylor, Saju does not achieve emotional closure or redemption in a symbolic scene, making his death more tragic and abrupt. The achieve emotional conclusion or redemption in a symbolic scene, making his death more tragic and abrupt. The ending uses his character to emphasize that even good intention can be destroyed by system of violence. The emotional tone of the ending is shaped by loss rather than victory. Even though Ovi survives, the cost is extremely high. Taylor, Saju, and many others die or are assumed dead.